Thank you. So very first, we're going to have Daniel Corti from the Philadelphia Visitor Center Corporation. He's just going to give a quick couple announcements from the Visitor Center, and then we're going to award our pins and certificates to our newly certified members. So nice warm welcome to Daniel.
Good evening, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Daniel Corti. I'm the newly hired Senior Director at Visitor Services at the Visitor Center. But for about 25 years, I've been in the museum industry here in Philadelphia. I've worked almost at every museum and could share some stories. Just want to let you folks know each month we stop here and just give some quick announcements. I have my April update sheet. It'll be on the table here, but I just wanted to point out a few key highlights from the sheet. One, our Liberty Beer Garden will be opening April 16th. If you stop your tours there, you can reach out to Maeda Sukup, and her contact info is on the sheet, and they can arrange incentives for your guests when you bring your tour to the Liberty Beer Garden. Also, not often, but we are currently actively recruiting volunteer tour guides for City Hall. So whether yourselves or if you know folks who are interested in sharing City Hall history and that sort of thing, the contact info is on here to reach out and learn about those opportunities as well. The Flash Bus is back, getting folks around the city nice and easy for just a few dollars. It'll be weekends only, Friday through Sunday in April through May, and then starting Memorial Weekend, it'll go full 7 days a week, just so you're aware. And lastly, we have our spring ticket bundle is now available, where if folks get 2 attractions, you save an extra 20%. Just to be respectful of your time, and one last quick thing I'd like to say, working in museums for the last 25 years, I've always been fond and appreciative of tour guides and docents and the job that you folks do. When our exhibits fail, when different experiences we offer fail for one reason or another, tour guides and docents have been the folks that are able to fill in those gaps with a flexibility and an engaging experience for guests, because they're a person and they can navigate the ins and outs of things failing and rooms that get closed. And we're going to go over here today. And I don't know if it gets said enough, and I don't know if everybody that you work with always feels the same way, but I don't take that for granted at all. And I definitely just want to say thank you for all the work you guys do doing that sort of thing.
So Rich asked, when are they going to finish the sidewalk where Flash would be boarding?
The stop that's normally in front of the Visitor Center right now is moved to behind the Visitor Center on Arch Street in front of the Constitution Center until that sidewalk work is done. Is for the new bike lanes they're putting in. And all I can tell you is the city is doing that. And so I don't know.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Okay, so nobody knows. So another warm applause for Daniel there, sharing the information with us. We appreciate the Visitor Center. So now we have the awards and pins for our newly certified members. We have 6 new certified members. Do you want to help me? Or Nina, you want to help me? You can help me. All right, Nina's gonna be my Vanna here. So you hold these and you can hand them out to people. So the first one is Barbara Frenzel. I don't think Barbara's here tonight, is she? No, she told me she didn't think she'd be able to come. So Barbara, so nice warm applause for Barbara. Congratulations. Right. Mike Heaney. Is Mike? There's Mike. So congratulations to Mike. Yes. Now come stand up here because we're going to do a photo. We'll have a photo op at the end, so don't go anywhere yet. Next, we'll have, you can take one and Todd can take one too, so we'll have them. Ed, I'm not sure to say it, Matinger? No? Did I say that right? Meitinger? I know I heard you say it and it wasn't how I thought. Here's your pin. Oh, there we go. Ed is in Nina's community garden. So congratulations, Ed. Next is Bradley Owen. Is Brad here? No, no Brad. Well, congratulations to Brad anyway. Stephen Pierce. I know I saw Stephen. There he is. So congratulations, Stephen. He's even wearing an appropriate shirt. Very nice, very nice. Certificate. Then we have B Segal. I know I saw B. Where's B? Oh, I'm like, she was here. There she is. Here's your pin and there's your certificate. Great. So congratulations to all of our newly certified members. And if anyone else would like to get certified, we want all guides certified in 25. The next exam is June 14th. So study up now if you want to take that. But let me know if you're planning to take it because I need to make sure I have enough exams. Let's get a photo here. So I can get a good one. Oh, just certificates out. Be proud. Get in the picture? No. Yes. I took like 30, so all right, Amy took like 30 photos, so in one of them, everybody's eyes will be open. Thank Mike for. Oh, Mike Tatey encouraged me to take the exam. Very nice, very nice. Yes, he did. Very good, very good. Okay, so next is our feature presentation with Ed Duffy, and Vince, our director at large on the board, is going to come introduce him. We'll give a warm welcome to Vince.
All right, for all you railroad nerds like me, tonight we have Ed Duffy. He's going to speak to us about his book, Philadelphia, A Railroad History. Ed is a graduate of LaSalle and Temple, former U.S. Army officer. He's worked for various city agencies, and in the 70s, he was the liaison for the city of Philadelphia when they worked with various railroads to create Conrail in 76, right? 1976. So he's kind of his own resource right here. He's also a contributor to Hidden City, Philadelphia, and Railfan publications. And I just found out he was also a reenactor at Rittenhouse Town, if any of you have been up there. And he also wrote this book called Philadelphia Celebrates, 3 Great Anniversaries, 1876, 1926, 1976. So maybe next year, Ed, we'll have you back for our 4th great anniversary, right? All right, please welcome Ed.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Good, good. Okay, I want to start out by thanking you for inviting me here because I don't think there's any group in Philadelphia more closely associates important events with the places where they occurred. And I really appreciate that because I once was a tour guide. I was a volunteer at historic Rittenhouse Town in Germantown, and I was David Rittenhouse. I had my own colonial outfit, and I was always happy to show people around there. So I feel like I'm a member of the family here. Well, before I get into the nitty-gritty of my talk tonight, I want to mention one important point, and that is that the railroad industry developed here in Philadelphia beginning in the 1830s and really was going full blast in the 1840s. But in the 1830s and 40s, the city of Philadelphia was a very small place. It was only 2 square miles between the 2 rivers, Vine Street on the north, going down to South Street. And the city passed an ordinance prohibiting the use of steam engines within the city boundaries. They were concerned about sparks flying out of the fireboxes and setting a fire to people's homes. So the industry really grew up, the railroad industry grew up around the city. And you'll see that in some of the maps, okay? So now I'm going to begin with my first slide here. Okay, this is a map drawn by the Philadelphia City Planning Commission of Philadelphia railroads in 1971. And I like to refer to this map as the calm before the storm, because the railroad industry was about to undergo waves and waves of change. It had already begun with the creation of Amtrak in 1970 with the Passenger Railroad Act. And at that very early stage, Amtrak did not own the tracks. They just owned the trains, and the trains ran on Penn Central tracks. What a bad idea that was, because the tracks got no maintenance because the Penn Central was bankrupt. So that leads to the next big piece of legislation that came along, which was the Regional Rail Reorganization Act of 1973. In 1973, here in Philadelphia, we had two railroads, the Penn Central, which was the successor to the Pennsylvania Railroad, and then we also had the Reading Railroad, and both of them were in bankruptcy, and there were 6 other railroads in the northeastern and midwestern United States that were also bankrupt. And so the government and really the western railroads like Union Pacific were really concerned that the railroad system in the east had just fallen apart. So they got this act passed to create a reorganization of all these bankrupt pieces of property. And so that occurred in 1976, the creation of Conrail. And then beyond that, there was other legislation which speeded up the deregulation of the railroad industry and allowed Conrail to abandon a lot of properties. And so when you look at this map today, I'm looking at lines that I remember well that are no longer there. I mean, if you remember where Sears Regional Catalog Headquarters was in lower northeast Philadelphia, there were 2 lines leading to that, and they're gone. There was a line on Washington Avenue. It's gone. There were quite a few lines like in Fishtown, gone. So I'm going to move on to my next slide. Oh, no, before I do that, I want to stop. The black solid line here shows the Pennsylvania Railroad. The line with the dots in it, fairly spaced far apart, that is the Reading Railroad. And then in the far southwest corner of Philadelphia, there's a line coming in, which is the B&O, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, which today is known as CSX. So that's how Philadelphia was in 1971. Now, I'm going to spend some time on this one because it's one of my favorite maps. It shows the Pennsylvania Railroad. And the reason that I want to emphasize it is because there's so many interesting things going on in Philadelphia today on some of these old lines. If you go down to Broad and Washington, I mean, man, that neighborhood is really popping. If you go out to call it Front and Palmer, that neighborhood is just incredibly growing. Go out to 30th Street Station, Schuylkill Yards. So a lot of the places that initially were on the Pennsylvania Railroad today, they are places of great interest. So the first line I want to talk about is if you look up to the left-hand side, you'll see it says original location of the Philadelphia and Columbia Railroad. Now, why did we have the main line built? And I want to go into that. In the year 1817, the state of New York created the Erie Canal, which was a totally water level route running from Albany on the Hudson River all the way to Buffalo on the Lake Erie. And so a canal boat could leave Manhattan and sail up to Albany, get on the canal, go all the way to Buffalo, and then on Lake Erie, they could go to Ashtabula, Ohio. And this was a wonderful system. And the United States was growing very rapidly in 1817 in like Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky. And so these people were really looking for a way to get all their product out and into the East Coast. And they had a hard time doing it in Philly. They had a hard time doing it in Baltimore. And now all of a sudden New York had it. So Philadelphia, which in 1817 was America's largest port and its largest city, it lost that characteristic very, very rapidly. Like within 2 years of the completion of the Erie Canal, which was like in 1826, the Philadelphia merchants were hurting. So they went to the state legislature and they pleaded with the state to do something. And the state came up with this idea called the Main Line of Public Works, which was to be an alternative to the Erie Canal. And it was a mixed system. There was a railroad that ran from Philadelphia to Columbia, Pennsylvania on the Susquehanna River. And then you got onto a canal boat. So you got off the train, got on a canal boat, and then you went to Hollidaysburg. Then now you're at the foot of the Allegheny Mountains. So now you're on a switchback railroad up to the top, down the other side, and then you get to Johnstown, and now you're back on a canal boat to Pittsburgh. So it was not a fun trip. And I have a funny slide here. This one, yes, I love this slide. This slide shows the inclined plane railroad running from the Schuylkill River up to Belmont Plateau. And this is a 7% grade, and it is a cable car, Philadelphia's first and last cable car. And it frightened the living lights out of everybody who rode on it, because they would have to get off the car there. And the bridge that you see down there in the, sort of the middle of the picture, that bridge, a new version of it exists. It's called the Columbia Rail Bridge. It's where you have the Kelly reviewing stand and Peters Island. That's the Columbia Bridge. So people would get off the train there, and then he would come all the way up on these cars, and then the train would be reassembled at the top of at Belmont Plateau. And by the way, if you go out there today, you can find, without much effort, traces of that line. And the reason is that the Pennsylvania Railroad, once they got in charge, and I'll get into that, once they got in charge of the system here, they really didn't want to use this cable car system. So what they did was, they starting at Ardmore, they went another way to get to 30th and Market Streets, where there was a bridge across the Schuylkill. And so they abandoned all this, and then they sold it off, and the Reading Railroad bought it. And they used parts, they used that bridge, we talked about the Columbia Rail Bridge, that was a Reading Railroad bridge. And the train, by the way, went from this Columbia Bridge to Broad and Vine, but on the north side of Vine Street, because, once again, the city of Philadelphia didn't allow steam engines in the city. So they came as close as they could get. They were like a couple feet away from Philadelphia, but that's how far they got. Okay, then another one that I would like to talk about is the one that you see listed as PB&W Railroad. That's a term I do not like to use, because it was originally conceived as the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore Railroad, the PW&B. So, please keep that in mind. At the time that the Pennsylvania Railroad was basically started as an east-west railroad. What they were trying to do is fill in the blanks where you had these canal boats and this switch engine thing going up and over the mountains. They wanted to get an all-rail route from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. And they succeeded in doing that by around 1858. So now they had a really smart president. J. Edgar Thompson was the president of the Pennsylvania Railroad. Once he got that, now he was looking to see, maybe I can get into some other business. Maybe I can get into the north-south business. And so he was looking at this PW&B Railroad. PW&B Railroad got its start in 1831. And it started out as three little railroads. One railroad was going to go from the west bank of the Schuylkill River to the Delaware state line. And then there was another little railroad that was going to go from the line to Wilmington, and then down to, Harvard Grace, Maryland, along the Susquehanna. And then a third railroad in Baltimore, they were going to go from Baltimore up to Harvard Grace. So it didn't take more than a couple of months for the light bulbs to go. They didn't have light bulbs in 1831, but the brain said, oh, wow, why don't we all get together and make one railroad? And so that's exactly what they did. And so that's how this railroad came into existence. So it was completed in 1838. First train ran on a Christmas Day, 1838. But then they got the idea, let's build a bridge across the Schuylkill River. Wow, what a great idea. Here we go. This is known as the Newkirk Viaduct. And it was crossing the Schuylkill River in Grace Ferry. And interesting the way it's built. You see there are two traffic lanes. One lane is for locomotives and trains. The other locomotive is for vehicle traffic. And so it started out as a toll road for the vehicles, But then the city didn't like that, and the city said, "We'll just give you a bunch of money and make it a free bridge. Would you please?" And that's what they did. So this was a really important bridge. Imagine in the Civil War, this is how you got troops and supplies from New York and New Jersey and Massachusetts to the battlefields in Virginia. So I want to point out on the left here, see the bridge is in the open position. Initially, that was horsepower. They would use horsepower to open the bridge and close the bridge, but then they switched over to a steam engine. But over on the left here, was a very interesting place called, actually, it was Gray's Ferry. There was a family named Gray, and they had a ferry. And it's really, really interesting what they did here, because eventually a bridge, they put in a bridge. They actually, the Gray family, put in a pontoon bridge, a floating bridge. And when a ship came along, they would just haul the bridge in and let the ship go by and then go out again. And then they came up with an idea. It was, not anymore, but it was a very beautiful location. They said, let's put in an inn for entertaining people. And let's put in a really nice garden here. Gray's Garden was what it was called. And they entertained George Washington and Martha Washington and all the delegates to the Constitutional Convention. And it was quite a nice operation they had here until the railroad came. So the where you're looking at right now on that left, that was known as White House Landing. And White House Landing was the home of the Gray family and where they had this tavern. And so just a little ways up from there, there was something called White House Landing, where ships would arrive to discharge wounded soldiers from the Civil War, who would then be taken by ambulance over to an enormous hospital in what is now Clark Park on Baltimore Avenue. Yeah, so there was quite a bit of interesting history here. I'm going to go back if I can. Yeah, here we go. Now, this beautiful building, I love this building. This was the station of the PW&B, constructed in 1852. This was the one where all the Civil War soldiers went through and all their equipment. This was Philadelphia's first modern railroad terminal. You notice that you have the head house on the front. It's a two-story head house. The offices of the railroad were on the second floor. And in the back, there's a train shed. And I'll bet you a lot of you have seen this in other cities. I mean, even here in Philadelphia, the Reading Terminal. Think of the Reading Terminal. It's a beautiful, magnificent head house with a train shed around back of it. Head house, it just means the part of the building which faces the street. Yeah. So this, as you can imagine, this railroad made a lot of money in the Civil War. And so they then, when the war ended, they did some modernization. They rerouted some of their trains. And what they did was they built a freight shed, which would be just to the right of this building. And here is the freight shed. I'll bet you all know that building. That is the Sprouts Farmers Market at 15th and Carpenter. And they've done a beautiful renovation of that building. And they've done such a great job of preserving the historic artifacts to the degree that they could. For example, the corbels that support the roof, these were all made Phoenix Iron Company in 1873. They took them all down, completely refinished them, and put them back up. And you can't see it here, but on the right-hand side of this building, next to that gray three-story building, is a walkway, and they call that the Lincoln Walk. And the reason for that is because after Lincoln was assassinated, his remains were brought to Philadelphia for a service that was conducted at Independence Hall for a couple of days. He was there. Back again. Interesting story about Lincoln. Lincoln had given a speech in Harrisburg, and then he came to Philadelphia after the speech to raise the flag at Independence Hall to celebrate the 34th star in the flag. Kansas became part of the Union. And the president of this union, Samuel Felton, he was concerned. This is February 1861. The war hadn't started yet, but the South was really, really all antsy about breaking away from the Union. So he hired the Pinkerton Detective Agency to keep an ear to the ground and find out, what was the sentiment going on along his railroad, the PW&B. And so he found out that a plot was being hatched to murder President Lincoln. The idea being that Lincoln had planned to go back to Harrisburg. And there's another railroad line that comes down to Baltimore called the Northern Central Railroad. And so they were planning to ambush the train and murder him. So Felton passed this on to Lincoln, and Lincoln made arrangements to instead go down to Baltimore aboard a sealed car that nobody knew he was in it. And so he avoided being murdered. Now, one other nice thing about the station I want to point out, the great abolitionist, Frederick Douglass, the first time set his feet on free soil was when he got off the train right here. He had forged papers saying that he was a free man. He wasn't. He was an escapee. But he got off the train right here, and that's where he first stepped on the free soil. Now, just across the street from that station, this is a Civil War hospital. It was known as the Citizens Volunteer Hospital. And when all the wounded, and by the way, Philadelphia treated 157,000 casualties from the Civil War, and a number of them were Confederate prisoners too. And so when they got off, when they were removed from the train, they would first go to this hospital, and the doctors would examine them and try to figure out which of the 14 Philadelphia hospitals they should go to, and then they would be put in ambulances or on another train and taken there. Now, another point that I would like to make, because I said earlier that Philadelphia prohibited steam engines, Philadelphia did allow railroads as long as they were horse-drawn. And there was a horse-drawn railroad on Broad Street running from Vine Street down to South, and there was a horse-drawn railroad on Market Street from the Schuylkill River down to Delaware Avenue, and what was then the Philadelphia Navy base. So as the railroad developed, Broad Street became lined with warehouses of shippers, freight forwarders, customs house brokers who were handling the cargoes that were coming off of the Pennsylvania Railroad up there at Broad and Vine, and then later from 30th and Market Streets. And so there was a Philadelphian by the name of Stephen Smith, who in his era, he was the wealthiest black man in the United States. And he had numerous business programs going on. And he had a Philadelphia partner named Stephen Still, and Still ran his warehouse for him, which was on Broad Street. So there's quite an interesting history there going on. Okay, now this is the Newkirk Viaduct Monument that was erected in 1838 or 1839. Philadelphians were so delighted with that bridge that I showed you that they decided they wanted to erect a monument to celebrate this bridge. And this is it, 14 feet high. And so they erected it right near the PW&B as it crossed over from the other side there, where I was showing you. That's where they put this monument. But then the railroad was growing and expanding, and it got in the way, and they said, we got to put it someplace else. So they put it down at 49th and Grace in an area that turned out to be a dumping ground. And it was just horrible. And in the book, by the way, if any of you read my book, which was written in 2013, I was commiserating about it being left in this dump site and how people should clean it up and remove it. And I said, let's put it at 30th Street Station. Well, somebody beat me to it. And that somebody's a guy by the name of Brad Peniston. And in this picture, he's the man with the white hat. And it was Brad who came up with the idea he brought a whole bunch of people together, raised funds, and he was able to relocate this monument to the site along the Wissahickon Trail, Bartram Mile. That's where it's now located. And so that was quite an accomplishment for Brad. I really, really take my hat off to him. Let me check my notes here real quick. No, I think Brad is from Baltimore. Yeah. Now that monument, by the way, was the creation of the architect engineer William Strickland of U.S. Capitol Dome fame, and also Girard College. He worked in the beautiful Greek temple building there. So he's quite a guy. And I urge everybody to come down and take a look at that. Okay, in 1902, I mean, that old bridge, that Newkirk Viaduct lasted from like 1838 until 1902, when it was replaced by this bridge, which some of you may recognize. This bridge, which is a swing bridge, was erected by the Pennsylvania Railroad in 1902, and it remained there up until, 4 years ago? And now they're using the pier. See, it rotates on a pier. And they're using that pier to create a bridge, a pedestrian and bicycle bridge over the Schuylkill River right there at that point. But when I was first involved in the railroad reorganization, and I go back to like 1973, that bridge was functioning. It hauled cars back and forth. Conrail didn't shut that bridge down until 1976. Okay, here's a shot that's near and dear to my heart because I had some experiences in this area. This is the Schuylkill River. The bridge that I just showed you is the lower of the two bridges. You can just barely make it out. The higher of the two bridges is Grace Ferry Avenue. And the square building right on the river is an abattoir that was built by the Pennsylvania Railroad in 1931. And it replaced an abattoir that was located where 30th Street Station now is. The railroad had to tear down the abattoir, and they had to move the abattoir, so they moved it down here. And I retired from the Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation. I was their VP Special Projects. And basically what I did was demolish buildings and do environmental remediation and grade it and pave it and so forth. And so that was one of the buildings that I worked on. If you look at that area today, it is now called Schuylkill River Bend. And the big industrial properties to the right of it, over there by University Avenue, that is now what's called Renovation. It used to be DuPont, and before DuPont, it was a company that manufactured chemicals that were used by the oil refineries. They manufactured ammonia, kind of like a dependent industry there. So then I also demolished the property across the street where you see a tank farm there. See the tank farm? That was a terrible environmental mess because it had been abandoned for like 30 years. It was a plant that manufactured roofing paper, or roofing tar paper. That's what it was, tar paper. They would take wool, felt, and they would soak it in tar, and then they put it on people's roofs. So when I was down there on the job, I came across broken statues, and I'm like, where did they come from? So I started doing some research, and I found out. I've been going back to the Gray family and Gray's garden that they put in here. Well, this had been Gray's garden, and he had statuary where people could walk around and enjoy the statuary, and it was really a beautiful place. If you can find any stories about it. In fact, I want to recommend a book right now on this subject. Book written in 1924 by John Frederick Lewis called Redemption of the Lower Schuylkill. You can still buy it on the internet, and it really tells you exactly what was going on the Schuylkill River, how bad it got. It was really, really bad. I mean, with all the pollution, and not only pollution from the oil refineries, but also pollution from the city, because the city dumped a lot of raw waste into the Schuylkill River below the Art Museum Dam, Fairmount Dam. The devil's bargain was that industry would leave the upper school alone because that's where the city got its water supply. Okay, but then the city said, well, then you can have the lower school, and so that's why this area turned into basically an open sewer. So, yeah, on the other side of the river is Woodland Cemetery. Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm going to switch gears and go to another area of the city, which is Front Street, Front and Palmer. And what we're looking at here is the railroad station at Kensington, the Philadelphia and Trenton Railroad Station. And interesting story about how this railroad got started. It also got started in 1831. The Pennsylvania legislature was very busy that year. And so some investors in Bristol, PA, Bucks County, came up with the idea, let's build a railroad from Trenton to Philadelphia. And so they got working on it, and they were making good progress through the countryside of Bucks County. But then as they got closer and closer to Philadelphia, Philadelphia was built up. It was building up. In fact, if you look at the census, U.S. Census from 1800, Northern Liberties and Penn Township was the 6th largest municipality in the United States, the 6th largest. So it was really, really getting built up. And the railroad found out that they just couldn't find the open country to build it. They're going to have to build it on city streets. So they went in and they got a permit from the township to build it in the bed of Front Street. Well, the neighbors really did not like that. Their attitude was, if you're not allowed to do this in Philadelphia, why are you being allowed to do it in Northern Liberties? And so the workers would be out there putting in the rails and the ties and so forth during the day. And at night, the neighbors would come along and pick up all the track materials, throw them into the Delaware River. Okay, so the company got really upset about this. And they went to the head of the township and said, we need police protection. You need to help us out. So the township hired 100 security guards to protect the workers in the railroad. And they were headquartered in a tavern on Front Street. It was down at Front. It was Third and Willow, and it was owned. The tavern was owned by the owner of this railroad. Okay, well, guess what? The neighbors found out, and they went down there, and there was a pitched battle fought between the 100 guards inside the tavern and the residents. And guess who won that one? And they not only chased the guards out, but they burned down the tavern. So in the melee, 2 rioters were caught, and they were convicted and sentenced to jail. And the people in the neighborhood petitioned the governor to free them, and he did. Okay, and all this was reported by none other than Edgar Allan Poe, because he lived in the neighborhood, and he described this as a splendid little war. So, I mean, you hear stories about Northern Liberties in Kensington and riots involving black people, riots involving Catholics. Well, there was riot involving railroads as well. You know, the people in Kensington really had a riot gene, if you will. Front Street.
So that's where the high school is now.
That's exactly right. The high school for the performing and creative arts
Right.
was built on this site. And I just love visiting this area because when I've just also written an article on this in a Railfan magazine. The tracks here were elevated in 1910 because the area was just becoming so congested. And so there was this steel structure that ran all the way from Kensington all the way back up to like around Allegheny Avenue. It was big. And gradually the industries all moved away, and it was just up there in the sky. And so the railroad decided they were going to tear it down. And I found pictures of it. These were like engineering photos, as-built photos, or progress photos, I should say. And so the neighborhood looked awful. I mean, it was all run down, lots and lots of abandoned houses, big stretches of vacant ground. Now to go there today, I mean, it just blows me away to see that. Okay, now I'm hopping back to 30th Street Station. And a really clever idea that this president of the Pennsylvania Railroad, J. Edgar Thompson, came up with. I mentioned to you that he had already figured out an east-west railroad. Now he wants to get involved in a north-south railroad. Well, how's he going to do that? Well, he's now at 30th and Market Streets, and his track does not go down any further. The PW&B is in Grace Ferry, and the Reading is up in Belmont. So he goes to these two other railroads and says, let's build our own junction railroad, which connects all three of them together. So if you guys in Reading want to go to Baltimore, you can use it. And you guys in Baltimore want to go to Trenton, you can use that as well. So they all joined up and built this. And this station here, this is actually at 31st. This is actually 31st and Market. And it was constructed out of materials that had been salvaged from the Great Sanitary Fair that was held at Logan Square. So this didn't last all that long, but it served its purpose. And so now you had a railroad running from Belmont Plateau to Market Street to Grace Ferry, that whole system. So then J. Edgar Thompson came up with another idea. He said, let's build a railroad that connects the Junction Railroad with the Philadelphia and Trenton Railroad. And he actually built that in the 1860s. And now you had, and also at that time, he purchased outright the Philadelphia and Trenton Railroad, which was owned at the time by another group called the United Railroads of New Jersey, which went all the way to Raritan Bay. And so now, from what he did, you could catch a train in Baltimore, come to Philadelphia, and go all the way to New York Harbor. So this was a genius thing to do. It really was. Now, a station which is kind of like midway on the connecting railroad is North Philadelphia Station. And this is a modern shot of the station. And this station was a very, very useful station for travelers going between New York and call it Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, Chicago. Before there was civilian aviation, if you were a New Yorker and you wanted to go to Chicago, you took the Pennsylvania Railroad and you came right through here. So if some of you are old enough to remember, it had very, very, very long platforms. And the reason for that was because they had many, many, many people using the station. But once commercial aviation developed, people could fly from New York to Chicago. They didn't want to take the train anymore. Here we have Reading Terminal. I'd like to talk a little bit about Reading. How am I doing on time? Ooh, running late. This magnificent building was constructed in 1893. And it was really at the high point of the Reading Railroad. The Reading itself was a conglomeration of a bunch of little railroads. One of them was the Philadelphia, Germantown, and Norristown Railroad. And that had a station at 9th and Green. And that has a very interesting history, which I discuss in my book. The railroad would sometimes operate on gravity. They would load a train with passengers in Germantown, push it, and the train would roll all the way down to 9th and Green. And what I love about it is there was no crew on board. They knew better, I guess. But what they would do is they would deputize one of the riders and say, your job is to collect the fare. And so that's how this thing operated for a while. It also operated with horsepower. And they bought a locomotive. It was the first industrial strength locomotive produced by Matthias Baldwin. It was called Old Ironsides. And they would use that to pull the trains back up to Germantown, but not on rainy days. They would keep it in its car barn, and the horses would have to do the job. So it was a typical Philadelphia Corti railroad. And the way they got this idea, it didn't take long. It took like maybe 30 minutes. Yeah, it was going maybe 9 miles an hour, something like that. So yeah, that's about right. It was about 4.5 miles. So the idea for this railroad came from a man by the name of Edward Bonsall from Germantown, Bonsall Street, and another Philadelphian by the name of Josiah White had an iron foundry in Fairmount, and he was burning anthracite coal or wood. He wasn't burning, I'm sorry, not anthracite, bituminous coal. He was using soft coal or wood in his foundry. But this iron, this coal came from Virginia. And in those days, it's like 1817, there weren't any railroads. So a horse and wagon had to bring a ton of coal up from Bath, Virginia to his Fairmount. And so he was paying a lot of money for this coal. And he had heard about there was an odd kind of hard coal up in the mountains of Pennsylvania. But nobody knew how to set it on fire. Nobody knew how to ignite it. So he decided to go up there and look at it, check it out. And he bought a ton of coal, anthracite, and he brought it down to Fairmount, and he puts it in his foundry there, trying to ignite it. It won't light, it won't light, it won't light. And so he's really upset. His workers are upset. It's Friday, it's like 6 o'clock. So they said, to hell with it. So they took all their black stones and they threw them into the furnace, and then they left. But one of the workers remembered he had forgotten his coat, and he came back to retrieve his coat, and the furnace was roaring with this burning anthracite. So Josiah White called all his guys back, and they did 3 heats of iron that night off of this one batch of coal. So he knew he was onto something. So that time was of the essence in making igniting this coal. He later on experimented with different sizes of coal and sizes of grates, and so he was able to make it go. But he knew a good thing when he found it. So he immediately went back up to the mountains of Carbon County, the eponymous Carbon County, and he bought mineral rights for 20,000 acres. And now he's beginning to mine coal. He convinced the state of Pennsylvania to build a canal along the Lehigh River down to the Delaware River, where there's the Pennsylvania Canal coming down to Bristol. And so now he's mining coal up on the top. It's called White Summit. Have you ever been up there, White Summit? That's where he had his coal mine. So now he's got his coal, but he's got to bring the coal down to the canal. How's he going to do that? So he using his surveyor's instruments, he created a railed road, a wooden railed road that was all downhill in the direction of the heavy cargo. Cargo went downhill, but they would have like every down there, a little rise to go up. So now he's got all his loaded wagons coming down to the bottom of the hill. So now how's he going to get the wagons back up the hill? So he comes up with this idea. He's going to take wagons, empty wagons, and load them with mules. And he puts the mules up in the top there, and the mules roll down this mountain, and the mules are going nuts. I mean, they can't stand it, you know. So he puts a boy. He puts a boy in each of these cars, feeding the mules hay as they go down to calm them down. So he's got them all calmed down. Okay, so that's how it all worked. And for the rest of his life, Josiah White loved to say that he invented the first dining car. So Josiah White and Ed Bonsall knew each other. Josiah invited Bonsall up to see his operation. Bonsall came back to Germantown and said, "This is what we got to do." So that's why he came up with this idea of the rolling car. The Reading was, yes. Oh, for sure. Yes. Yeah. I can repeat it. Is there any connection between the Reading Railroad and the Reading Coal and Iron Company? And the answer is yes. In fact, that was one of the reasons why Reading Railroad went bankrupt in the 1870s. It was specifically against their charter for the railroad to own coal mines. The president at the time, a guy named Franklin Gowan, said, "To hell with it, we're going to own coal mines." And so he then began mining lots and lots of coal. But what happens is, supply and demand. If there's too much coal, the price goes down. And so he found himself in such a bad situation that he couldn't pay his debt service on the bonds that he had borrowed from England. His financier was the Bank of McAlmont in London. And so the Bank of McAlmont forced them into bankruptcy. The Reading Railroad went bankrupt several times. And the amazing thing what I love about this building here, this Reading Terminal, is that right between bankruptcies, they somehow found the money to build this. This to me is one of the most beautiful buildings in Philadelphia. And the fact that it got built just right between bankruptcies, it's just amazing. It was like the good Lord was looking after Philadelphia. Yeah, here is the station of the Philadelphia, Germantown, and Norristown Railroad at 9th and Green. That's I was telling you earlier. That's what it was. When the Reading Railroad built Reading Terminal, they needed all kinds of permits from the city of Philadelphia. And the city of Philadelphia said to them, we're not going to let you come into this station at grade, like that other station I just showed you. You're going to have to elevate your tracks to come in. And that's another, this is like one of the just an incredible amount of work that the railroad went into from like 1904, I'm sorry, 1893 to like 1908. They elevated the track on 9th Street all the way back to like Allegheny Avenue. I mean, what an enormous job. But they did it, and so we now benefit from that. Here we have the B&O Railroad. This is their station designed by Frank Furness down at 24th and Chestnut. They only came into Philadelphia in the 1880s simply because once J. Edgar Thompson purchased the Philadelphia and Trenton Railroad, he told the B&O, we're not allowing any of your cargo on this line. If you want to come up here, you're going to have to do it yourself. So the B&O hooked up with the Reading Railroad right at the Art Museum, And so the B&O built a track up along the Schuylkill River. In fact, it was called the Schuylkill River East Side Railroad. That's the name of it. And they hooked up with the Reading Railroad right underneath of the Art Museum. There's a tunnel there at Pennsylvania Avenue. And then they were onto the Reading. And the Reading, and again, this president that he had, Franklin Gowan, patched together a series of lines with mergers that took him right up into Raritan Bay. And very nice. I used to, back in the 70s, I used to ride that line all the time. I was basically commuting to a job in New York, in downtown Manhattan. And I'd ride the Reading up. Reading was a quirky railroad. And I remember the first time I got on there at Wayne Junction. And the conductor says to me, how do you like your coffee? And I said, black with sugar. So he hands me a cup. Next time I get on the train, I'm sitting there, black with sugar. They knew. And there was very few people on that train coming out of Philadelphia. But when it got to Jenkintown, I mean, like 100 people got on the train at Jenkintown. I mean, it was packed. And then as it went up to West Trenton, it picked up another 100 people. And by the time it rolled into, I guess it was Jersey City, it was a full house. This station only, the passenger traffic on the B&O was terminated in 1958. They just couldn't make any money on it. They gave up. Here we go. This is Broad Street Station of the Pennsylvania Railroad. Now this building, as you see it here, was constructed in 1893. The station was originally constructed in 1881, but the Pennsylvania Railroad, seeing what was happening on the Reading Railroad, got a strong case of edifice envy, and they said, "Well, if they're going to build on that, then we're going to have to do something better." So once again, he went back to Frank Furness to be the architect, and they built this building, which lasted them until around 1954. They stopped the train in 1952, and then the demolition went on for about 2 years. And I remember the demolition. I was a little boy, and my dad had a business restoring artwork, and he had an old stable on Cherry Street, and it was a 3-story stable. And I was a little kid. I would get up on the third floor where the hayloft had been, and I'd look out the window and watch the ball swing and the building come down. And I knew right then and there I wanted to be involved in demolition. So, and I did. And here we are with the beautiful 30th Street Station, built in 1930, 1931, although it was not finished until around 1952 because the Depression and World War II intervened. And so, it's now really a centerpiece of School River Yards. The eagles that you see, that eagle you see up front here, came from Pennsylvania Railroad's Penn Station. Four of them were brought down to Philadelphia. Well, I guess that concludes my talk. Who knew? Thank you. Okay, anybody have a question?
Thank you very much for that talk. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
Because you've been in the railroad so long, maybe you have opinion, maybe you have fact, but I'd like to better understand why our certain people in our government are so anti-railroad. We spend billions and billions of dollars on highways, and a railroad is still the most efficient way to travel. And we don't invest in our railroads and take some of that money from the highways and invest it in a proper railroad system.
Well, I totally agree with that. I think part of the problem is that when you want to increase the amount of passenger railroad traffic, the railroad tracks that would be used belong to for-profit freight railroads. I'm sure a lot of you remember an effort was made to run a train up to King of Prussia. This is a couple years ago. A Philadelphia firm, Urban Engineers, had the design contract for it. They could never get anywhere with Norfolk Southern because Norfolk Southern owned the track. And he said, no, we don't want this to happen. But I will tell you a very interesting story and a true story. I was PIDC's project manager for the site work when UPS built their air terminal down at Philadelphia International Airport on Hog Island. And we had to get a whole bunch of permits for that. We were filling in wetlands. We were digging up a historic battlefield. We had to get air permits. And one of the permits we had to get was from the Federal Aviation Administration to put a plane up in the air, okay? And I thought, for God's sake, there it is. That's the air. You put the plane up. Not true. Not true at all. The amount of air traffic in the Northeast Corridor, which the aviation people measure from Richmond to New Hampshire, okay, it's just crammed with aircraft. And so UPS had to sign an agreement that they could only put their planes up between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. They cannot take off at any other time because the sky is so crowded. So the railroad, Amtrak, what a great service it provides. It provides to the aviation industry. They can make more money on their planes and put the passengers down there on the ground. Yeah. But I do think it's the problem with the freight railroads not wanting passenger traffic on there. Yes.
I've heard tell that contributing factors to the demise of Pennsylvania Railroad, Reading Railroad, is that during World War I and World War II, particularly, there were agreements with the government that military could be transported and that the government would reimburse the railroads when the war was over. And then those reimbursements never took place, thus contributing to their financial distress. If that's true, can you speak to that, please?
Sure. During World War I, the U.S. government nationalized the railroad system. And it was called the U.S. Railroad Administration. And essentially, with the government running the railroad, when they negotiated with the unions pay raises and so forth. The government had no vested interest in keeping the wages low, unlike if it was like a private company. So they basically gave the union a lot more money than then at the end of World War I. There was a big debate in the United States, by the way, over whether the United States should have a nationalized railroad. That was a big deal in 1920, 1922. The final decision was made, we're going to go back to the private system. But the government basically wore out the railroads. It wasn't so much that they denied them the money, it's that they wore out their property. And the railroads, reasons for the railroads doing so poorly, one of them was in the creation of the Interstate Commerce Commission, which, by the way, the railroads asked for. They wanted this. But then once they got it, the ICC got control by the Hepburn Act of 1907. They got control over rate making. And so now the railroad had to explain why they wanted to raise the rate, okay? They had to actually explain it. Now the shippers created their own organization called the National Transportation League, the NIT League, and they would have a guy run in and he would say, oh, no. They shouldn't be raising the rates. They should be lowering the rates. And so the railroads basically got cut off. They couldn't just go around charging whatever they wanted to charge. And so that was a problem. And that problem trickled down to Baldwin, because Baldwin had built this enormous plant down in Delaware County, a gigantic plant, 600 acres, 100 acres under roof. They never, ever hit 100, anywhere near full production until World War II. During World War II they did. But because the railroads could no longer afford to buy locomotives. So what they would do is they would take a steam locomotive that they bought in 1900 and they would run it through a service life extension program, and that would add 15 years onto it. So now that locomotive is good up until 1945. And by 1945, diesels were coming back. Diesels were taking over. So from 1945 until 1955, almost all steam locomotives in the United States were scrapped. So the railroad, and then again, I just add to that, the U.S. government subsidized the construction of the highways, the federal highway system. They subsidized the Great Lakes system, Salt Lake Marie, St. Lawrence Seaway. The amount of subsidies going on, and the railroads weren't getting a penny of that. They were just taking business out of the railroad's pocket.
Delaware, well, not Delaware Avenue, on Columbus Boulevard, they put a new rail system there that never ever happened.
Yes, I sure do. Well, what happened is this. The Delaware Avenue was absolutely horrible if you go back to like 1975, 1976. When I first started with the railroad business, okay, and I didn't know much or anything about railroads. So I decided I'm going to take a ride down there. And so I drive down on Delaware Avenue, down on Delaware and Oregon Avenue. And a locomotive is going down the street, and it's blocked by a truck. So the engineer gets out of his cab, and he runs over and he calls the truck driver. The truck driver gets out of the cab, and the two of them are having a conversation. And next thing you know, the truck driver, pow, punches out the locomotive engineer and knocks him flat on the street. So, I mean, it was a very rough and tumble business, and the street was in horrible, horrible condition. So the state of Pennsylvania, PennDOT, decided they were going to renovate all of that area. Now, what you mentioned that is not being used at that time. I'm talking like around 1980. There were two piers called Piers 3 and Pier 5, which are like just below Market Street, and those piers were very important to the Philliport. They were the piers that handled cocoa beans way back then, and so the port people insisted that PennDOT put a rail back, and that's exactly what they did. Now, another phase of the job came along a couple years later, but by then, the port people had decided they no longer needed 3 and 5, and they let them out for conversion to residential. And so, I mean, clearly, PennDOT is not stupid. They said, look, we did all this work and there's no business here. And you want us to put the track back going up to Port Richmond? We're not going to do that. So they just dropped the track right around Vine Street. It doesn't go any further north than Vine.
Related to railroad, but to the Gray family. And they actually got their money from Barbados and sugar
Okay.
in the 17th century. So they came to be rich. So we know that. And the other thing, I belong to Rail Passengers, which is an advocacy organization for railroads. And actually during this meeting, an email came. And our Secretary of Transportation, wants to privatize Amtrak. And so this is a big argument against it and how this is, it's not going to work. And that essentially all passenger rail needs to be subsidized. It's not profit making by its very nature, but it generates income from the travelers who go places and spend money. So, which is a little complicated argument, but so it's inherently frustrating. And the secondary issue where the rails themselves are owned by freight companies. So it's not an easy thing. But what I've heard the Secretary of Transportation talk about is that he's only interested in investing in those areas that have high traffic. Yeah. And the tickets will, be $300 that are paid for by the law firms, the passengers are employed by,
Well, I would just comment on that. I do believe that Amtrak makes money between Washington and New York. Okay, that's actually a profitable railroad, but then they lose money when they go from like Fort Worth to Dallas or Keokuk to Great Falls. So, but the senators who represent Keokuk and Great Falls, they got to have Amtrak, and so it's sort of the devil you do and devil you don't.
I'll just add to that. I wish someone would do the calculation to determine how much the highway system is subsidized versus the lack of subsidization of the railroad.
Yeah.
If it could ever be crystal clear communicated, I think there'd be more support for the railroads. But I think there's too much interest in promoting the highways and maybe too much money.
Economists have attempted to quantify the number you're looking for, which they call the true cost of highways. And the true cost includes not only the wear and tear on the highway, but the incidence of children getting asthma and the accidents that occur and the hospital bills and so forth. Yeah.
Rail cars for Philadelphia, and I think he got some for Chicago too, and Baltimore. So that should help. Yeah, they haven't spent it already. Yes, they don't have it.
More likely stolen.
As a resident down on Columbus Avenue in the riverfront, they're at least taking surveys and such to try and reopen that rail line for like a little light rail from, I think, Vine down to Washington Avenue. So I'm strongly advocating that they do open it because it's be a nice little crosstown thing and build down that area.
So I also write for City of Philadelphia, and quite a number of my articles, about half of them, are on railroads. And I was trying to get SEPTA interested in restoring rail service from 9th and Girard Avenue onto the system. And I just hit a stone wall, a total stone wall. I tried to get them interested in reviving rail service from Tioga, because before COVID, my wife and I used to travel a lot. and we would be coming home at the airport, say around 10 o'clock. And I live like right next to a train station in Mount Airy. And so we would try to time it such that we got out of the baggage area and got on the train, and we caught the last train to Mount Airy. But what we would see is those last trains, the airport high-speed line, those last trains out of the airport were workers, baggage handlers and restaurant people and so forth. And, I'm sure there was a lot of people living in the vicinity of Tioga who would love to be able to get on the train at Tioga and go to the airport. And I suggested that in one of my articles to SEPTA, and I got the nastiest response saying, "Who the hell are you to tell us what to do?" Yeah, look up that article and look at the responses I got from it.
Was there ever rail service going east-west from Girard? Great rail service?
Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you one thing. I didn't. I used to be a tour guide. I was a volunteer. At Historic Rittenhouse Town, and we had a colonial outfit for David Rittenhouse, and I was the only volunteer who was a 42 long, and so I became David Rittenhouse until I outgrew it. That was like 20 years ago.
Was
Okay.
there rail service east-west on Girard? Was it a freight rail line?
I didn't hear that.
Big service on east-west on Girard?
There was a passenger station located at 9th and Girard. And actually, it was the Reading Railroad that shut it down. And that was like around 1949. But look at all the development that is occurring on Girard Avenue. I mean, my Lord, hundreds, thousands of new residential units are being constructed there. And to have that service there where someone not necessarily going to Center City, but they're going to the airport, they're going to Jenkintown, they're going all around the SEPTA system because of that brilliant idea, the Center City Commuter Connection Tunnel. I mean, that takes you everywhere in this region. And so, but to try to talk to SEPTA about that, I mean, it's like banging on a wall. Thank you, Michelle.
Can you stay for a minute? Can you stay for a minute? I'm just gonna get some announcements. Okay, so he's going to stay for a few minutes. So just have a few announcements. And if any of you want to, have further questions or want to chat with him, he's going to stay for a few minutes. Oh, he has books for sale. Oh, awesome. And he has books for sale. Cool. Okay, so some quick announcements. Tour guide coffee break, April 15th at 10 a.m. So that's next Tuesday. How to get started as a tour guide. We're going to do a Zoom workshop. So if you're new to the organization or new to guiding, or even if you've been in the organization, but you haven't been a guide and you want to kind of, learn about how to get started, how to break in, we're going to have a Zoom, April 23rd at 7 p.m. It's free. So you just have to, let me know if you want to register. We're having a tour of the USS New Jersey on May 4th. So if you have not been on this battleship, you definitely have to go. 10 a.m. The information's in the newsletter, on the website. It's $12. You can contact Mike about that. May Book Club, they're going to read Portrait of a Woman in Silk. Zara Anna Chanslin, if you remember when we did our declaration panel about the Declaration of Independence, she was one of our speakers. And if you've been with APT a long time, she's spoken to us many times over the years, but she wrote the book. They're going to do that on May 20th at 7 on Zoom. Look online. I don't know off the top of my head. Oh, really? So Diana's saying it's hard to get from the library, but you can probably look, on Amazon. I know who wants to buy from Amazon these days. But anyway, it is available. I'm sure it's available other places too. I know it's through Harvard University Press, I think is who published it. Worst case, let me know. I'll talk to Zara, see if she can get us some copies. Certification exam I mentioned, June 14th is the next one. So if you want to take it then, if you want to get certified. And we are looking for mentors. So I have a number of new members who are interested in being mentored. I just need some more experienced people who are willing to kind of talk to them. It's not a high commitment, you know, like a coffee date, get together, answer some questions. You could do it over Zoom or over the phone if you don't want to actually get together in person. But we're looking for some people for that. So email me if you're willing to help out some younger, not necessarily even younger, but just less experienced members. Homecoming 250. So this fall is the 250th anniversary of the founding of the Navy and Marine Corps. I guess this summer is the Army as well, but we don't have a collaboration with them, but we do have a collaboration with Homecoming 250 for all these celebrations for Navy and Marine Corps. So if you want to do a tour, I highly encourage everyone here to do a tour. It could be a little tour, a big tour, it could be local, it could be in New Jersey, it could be, you know, anywhere where there's Navy Marine history. We have a great presentation by George Leone on our YouTube channel. I think it was May 2024? May of last year, he came and spoke. He literally covered every single Navy Marine topic you could ever think of in the greater Philadelphia area. So he has lots of ideas. Just do some research, put something together. I mean, it's a great way to make some money in the fall, right? It'll be in October. When most of the guests are coming is October. So we're linking up to their website, the Homecoming 250 website, and we're going to list all the tours offered. So put something together, let me know, let Mike know. We'll get it up there, get you guys some business. Do you want to say anything else about that, Mike? Yes, thank you. Jim is offering a shadow tour. So we're doing, you're right, I forgot that in my notes. From mid-April through May, we're going to do shadowing opportunities for guides. So whether you're new or even if you're experienced, but you just want to shadow some people and I love going other people's tours just to get more information, see how they do it. I always learn. Even if, you know, you can even learn what's not good to do on a tour. If you go and you don't enjoy something, then you know not to do that on your tour, right? There's always a benefit from it regardless. But Jim is kicking us off. So he's offering a free tour April 12th. This Saturday, this is the 12th, right? This Saturday, 10 a.m., 11 a.m., meeting at the Visitor Center. Well, double check that on the website and in the newsletter. But contact Jim. He has his emails in the newsletter and website if you want to, you know, go on that. Great opportunity to see an experienced guide. Doesn't mean you have to do the same tour or share the same information. It's just collecting information, right? It's just learning so that you can find your voice and what you want to tell on a tour. But I think it's a great opportunity and it's free, so go. Did you want to say something about Homecoming 250? Okay. Well, let me finish this and then I'll give the mic to Mike. Actually, I think that's all I had. So let me give the mic to Mike, and then I know Vance had something he wanted to say, and then if anyone else has an announcement, they can do that as well.
We do have the sign-in form. If you haven't filled this out, looks like only about half the people have written in. You don't have to sign it. You can just print your name if you prefer. So if you could please do that before you go. We do have a couple of events. One that just sprang up today. A couple of our members were at the Penn Library, Van Pelt. They met Jim Duffin, the archivist there, and he's putting together a special tour at Penn just for us. It was Penn's idea. Was that you're urging? Yes.
Not really.
No. Okay, he gave you credit, so we'll give you credit for that. So we're going to see the Penn during the Revolution. Their special exhibit that's going to be closing this July, and it's going to be an APT special. He wants to give us a presentation on how he put the maps together. Some beautiful maps. He sent them to me. So that will be in June on a weekday. We haven't nailed down the exact day yet, so pay attention for that. And then many of you know Annie, who lives in Wilmington, Delaware. She's arranged for a special day in Wilmington on July 10th. That's a Thursday. We're going to visit Hagley Museum. And then she's arranging for a lunch at the Hotel DuPont, which if you've been in Wilmington, it's at the top of Market Street. And then we can stroll down towards the bottom of Market Street and see the Delaware Historical Center. And across the street from that is remnants of an old part of Wilmington that used to be called Willington. Thomas Willing founded that about 8 years before Wilmington was founded. So it's all very interesting and historical. We want to thank Annie for doing that. There's a nominal cost to get into the museum. So keep an eye on the newsletter for exactly how to sign up for that. July 10th, it's a Thursday. And then in May, our speaker is Dr. Kelly Barnes on the Invisible Architects of Freedom Digital Archive, which is on the NPS website. And this is her scholarly work. So she'll be here to share all that information for us. We don't know yet, so thanks for asking, but we're not entirely sure. We'll let you know, obviously, between now and then. Anything else? Vance. Okay, come on down. You have to race Vance. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, everybody, I'm Gigi. How you doing? I just wanted to let you know that there's going to be a temporary exhibit at the Rotunda. If you're familiar with the Rotunda at 40th and Walnut Street, if you go down into their lower level, they have a beautiful marble staircase. It goes to the bathroom, and it looks quite scary. But it's a wonderful open space. So I asked Gina Resna, who is the director there, if I could do a temporary museum exhibit called the Philadelphia Museum of Neighborhoods. And so the focus is going to be on the distinct neighborhoods of Philadelphia and those neighborhoods no longer exist, right? Like in Eastwick and parts of South Philly. And so I'm asking all of you expert tour guides and historians if you have any pictures, artifacts, anything that I could take a picture of, replicate to put on this exhibit. It's not a very large space, but it's not small either. I would love, love, love to get feedback from each and every one of you or whoever's interested in any pictures that you would like to contribute. I have cards. I'm Gigi, if anyone is interested. In this, I will start cleaning up and decorating in the next 2 weeks, and it's going to have a launch May 23rd, I believe, is when we're going to do 22nd or 23rd. And I would invite all of you, but I really want to make sure that I tap the knowledge that's here tonight. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Vance Lemko from the American Vegan Center, and as a segue from our last speaker, I'm going to point out that the American Vegan Center, just on 2nd Street, right up here across from Christ Church, opened on September 9th, 2021, and our first customer was Gina Renzi, the program director at the Rotunda. So right there, you can see it all. It's all coming together. I want to just take this opportunity to ask everybody, what are you planning on doing on April 27th, Sunday, April 27th at 3:30 p.m. I would suggest that you come to the American Vegan Center, spend an hour learning about Benjamin Lay, who you may have heard me talk about, you may have heard other people talk about, but now more and more people are talking about him as a new play is opening in Mount Airy at Quintessence Theater on May 1st called The Return of Benjamin Lay. This is a play that is co-written by the man who put Benjamin Lay back in front of people's faces with his biography, The Fearless Benjamin Lay, which was a Book of the Month selection of APT back in 2022. And I created a tour specifically for that, and it was only open to tour guides. A good number of you took it. I don't remember who, but since 2022, there have been many new members who didn't get a chance to take that tour. So we're going to be redoing this tour. I'm now opening it to the public, but there is a steep discount for tour guides. The regular price is $30. Tour guides can do it for $10. Either way, it's a great opportunity to come and learn about Benjamin Lay in a fun way, like seeing the places that he walked around and so forth. But then I encourage you, if you are at all inspired by that, or if you want a different angle on it, to get a ticket for the Quintessence production, which opens May 1st, and it runs the first 3 weekends of May. And I have a QR code. I would invite anyone who has any interest in learning any more about this to come and just get your phone, to put this on your phone. You can, peruse it at your leisure and decide whether it's something you want to do. But I wanted to throw this out specifically to the tour guides because the tour does get into a lot of the stuff about Benjamin Lay that other people don't bother talking about, because he was vegetarian, and for him that was a very important overlap with his abolitionist crusade. But I wanted to make this available to you because I think that he's the kind of historical character that Philadelphia as a could use more of, and I would love to see more tour guides finding ways to integrate Benjamin Lay. Obviously, I'm interested in him because he's vegetarian, but there's plenty of things that have nothing to do with that that make him a great character to include in your lineup when you're talking about people from the 18th century. So that's my pitch. I know I've already gone for 2 minutes, but if you have any interest whatsoever, please come up and check this out. Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything here? Diana has something she wants to share. And if you need to leave, that's fine, just quietly. But Diana has another announcement.
Hi there, very briefly. I've been working on a book about Samuel Nicholas, and I know that Mike made this narrative that I wrote some time ago available, but I've been working on making sure that what I have written is actually correct. So I have 8 chapters now written that focus specifically on the period of the American Revolution. And I'm looking for friendly readers. So if you're interested in reading what I've written so far, I'd be very interested in your expert feedback, as whether it's readable, but also, tidbits that are in there, whether that might be of interest to you, whether you have something to add, etc. So if so, I'll just stay. You can give me your email and then I'll send you digital forms of what I've written. Thank you.